So, good evening, friends, and welcome to Smart Investing, a knowledge series powered by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Cafe Mutual to help you make more informed and investing decisions. Friends, our state of mind influences the decisions we make, and investment decisions are no exception to this. Our decisions have huge implication on investment portfolio. In fact, there is a possibility that our behavior may fetch not so good returns for us. So to prove this point, I'll narrate my own recent experience. So a few days back, when I was on a way back home after the work, and suddenly the rain started. So I was just 10 minutes away from my house. Nevertheless, I waited at a supermarket shed waiting for the rain to stop. But the rain only got stronger. So at a certain point, I thought of buying an umbrella, but I thought, why should I waste 250 rupees for an umbrella? But in the entire process, I waited for an hour and got tired by standing at the shed. So after reaching home, I ordered food worth rupees 1000 as I have no energy left. So when I introspect this incident later, so I realized that if I could have bought that umbrella, 250 rupees umbrella, and reach home in time, I could have cooked a good food, good and healthy food, and saved both time and money. So moral, our behavior has a huge impact on our financial lives too. So to take us through our own behavioral biases, we have with us Prasad Ramani, founder Syntonic, and Shailendra Dikshit, Zonal Manager, Investor Education and Distribution Development at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Welcome, Prasad and Shailendra.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you for having me here today.
Thanks, Nishant. Glad to be here.
So Prasad is a chartered financial analyst and financial risk manager by qualification and has more than 2 decades of experience in quantitative and behavioral finance. Meanwhile, Shailendra has over 15 years of experience in sales, and he has done his MBA from Symbiosis University, Pune. So basically, we have 2 power hitters in our team now. So I'll start this session with Prasad. So Prasad, my first question to you is that many investors look at past performance, time horizon, risk of the fund before investing their monies. However, many experts believe that their behavior has a key role to play in investment, as I have mentioned earlier in my real life incident as well. So how can human behavior impact investing decisions in real life, according to you?
I think we have to just take a step back before we get into this whole financial decision-making process. We have to look at how we actually make decisions. And to understand that, we need to understand a little bit about how our brains are actually wired. Yeah. So you have to think this from this perspective of evolutionary psychology. Man has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and the brain has evolved over those thousands of years, right? Now, suddenly, in the last 50, 60 years, we are faced with investing and markets and modern society and everything like that. So our decision-making has been evolved over thousands of years in a different situation. And now suddenly the context has changed. So what has served us well, 3,000 years ago is not going to serve us well today, right? So for a very simple example, we have been successful as a human species because of our fight and flight response, fight or flight. We either know how to fight or we either know when to get out of a particular situation. Right. Confidence is really good because confidence is what actually helped us as a human race to evolve. Optimism is all good. So all this stuff is good, right? But what ends up happening is when you move from confidence to overconfidence, it's a very thin line. When you move from optimism to over-optimism, that's a very thin line. Also, when you start extrapolating your present into the future, that's when you start making mistakes, right? So these are reasons why our behaviors actually impact our financial decision-making process, because we have been using techniques that we have learned in the past. It's in our DNA, and we kind of continue to use that even now. So that's the context, right? And then, so for example, when it comes to looking at past returns, when it comes to like investing, when it comes to analyzing the markets, these are all these mental shortcuts that we take that can result in some errors. Sometimes it can be just luck, blind luck that you do well, but a lot of times it ends up hurting you. So that's the context behind why behavioral finance and behavioral economics is very important in the financial decision-making context today.
Okay. So Prasad, but despite being one of the dearest thing to people, I mean, money is the most dearest thing to all of us. But why has the behavioral aspect of money has not been researched till recently?
That's a great question. So what has happened is, if you look at even the development of the scientific literature in economics, right? In the 1950s and 1960s is when rigorous mathematical models and all started, coming into the picture. But till almost about 2000, right? What ended up happening was there were some basic assumptions made by economics in 1920s, 30s. And that most basic assumption was that human beings are rational, operators. So that word rational is very loaded. It basically means that we always take the right decisions given the right amount of information, that we make the most logical decisions, that we think through every single permutation and combination. And that was important because that helped with the mathematical beauty and the efficiency of the models that were being developed. And so the human factor was kind of ignored. So for example, if you take the whole, the hypothesis about how markets operate, right? So if you look at the efficient market hypothesis, basically there shouldn't be any rallies, there shouldn't be any bubbles, there shouldn't be any market drops like crazy, because everybody believes that the markets are efficient, in which case it should literally be a flat line of accrued value happening over time. That never happens, right? And so only since 2000, the whole economics department started taking into account the psychological factors involved, and psychological factors are very difficult to model quantitatively. There are hardly like 5-6 firms in the world right now that's even attempting it, and we are one of them. And we understand that it's not easy, it's not perfect, because human behavior changes from like moment to moment, right? So optimizing it's a difficult mathematical problem, which is what the industry has actually started to do. So in the last, like say 7, 8, 9 years, there have been more than like 30 to 40 journals on behavioral finance now. So that should show you that in the next 30 to 40 years, this is going to be a core component of financial services.
Okay. So my next question is for Shailendra. So Shailendra, ABSL, Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund, is on a journey to make financial literate India. In fact, the fund house has conducted over 10,000 IPs in India so far. So have you come across investors who have made financial mistakes due to their own behavior? Can you share some real life examples?
Thanks, Nishant. The question is that when we say mistake, we get to know it, only later on, after the event. It's very tough to say today that if it is a mistake or mistake is always a hindsight opinion, is what I would say. We would say this is a mistake only in hindsight, not at that point of time. Very rarely one can predict at that point of time that it was a mistake. So that is one thing to always keep in mind when we say, do investors make a mistake? Of course, no doubt about it. And we would say it is a mistake when it turns out to be wrong. And when all the indications were there, maybe, I would say all the indications, but there were a lot of indicators that maybe they are not taking the best of decisions. So in spite of historic data, or in spite of, as Prasad said, behavioral angle. So looking at that, there would be indications that this might not be the best of things to do, even if they, take that path and then they turn out to be wrong, is what typically we would say, they were on the wrong path and it turned out to be wrong. So yeah, that does happen a lot in this industry. I've seen it. I've seen 2 crashes in the market, as to say 2008 and then last year. So everyone has seen. And the common thing in both is that the toggling of behavior between greed and fear is extremely high. It's peculiar, it's repetitive, and it is, in simple words, response to stimulus. So that behavior is a constant. That mistake, I would say, which you realize in hindsight, is a constant thing. It's a constant feature. Investors toggle between greed and fear, and then either inaction or too much of action. I mean, overaction, as to say, over enthusiastic, as to say. And that is a mistake that people make. Now, that is applicable to any asset class, frankly, not just mutual funds, any investment that can happen. So you tend to enter when it is at the peak of that particular cycle. There are indications that that particular cycle is at a peak. Even then you enter that cycle, because the simple word I use for that is inertia. You continue to believe, that everything continues to be in the same state till it is opposed by something. So you believe in that inertia, that it is doing well, it will keep on doing well. Only thing is, you don't see what is coming, in very near future, which is going to oppose it, and that inertia is going to stop, or it is going to reverse. So that always happens. People tend to fluctuate. That has happened at various peaks of market for various asset classes, for equity, for real estate, for gold. And the same is applicable for the reverse. When that asset class is going damn cheap, like last year when markets were at 26, I don't know many people who were rushing to invest at that point of time. Or when gold 3 years back was at 30,000, no one was rushing to buy gold at that point of time. Because 7 years before that, gold had given no returns. It had given no returns. So that happens. So that aversion to fear, aversion to losses, and chasing something which is already doing well, inertia, as I said, is a very, very common feature that we have always seen cycle after cycle.
Okay, so you have already covered my next question, which is about why do people make behavioral mistakes? So as you rightly pointed out.
Actually, we can do a small thing. I think, Prasad, we can try. It's a 2-minute exercise. It's a 2-minute exercise.
Absolutely.
And we have a good, nice, focused crowd of 47 people. I would request everyone to participate in a small poll that we will take. Small poll that we will take. But before that, I will run a small presentation. It's a 4-slide presentation.
Sure.
Because me and Prasad discussed that yesterday. It's a very common behavioral, I don't know what to say, bias or mistake or whatever you call. And maybe Prasad can amplify on that after we run the simulation. So there will be 2 situations we will share with our audience, and the audience has to make a choice between A or B. Where will they invest? They have to invest, that is one thing. But where will they invest? Choice A or choice B? So I will run the presentation. I will show the slide, and on the slide, so this is my request to all, that you have an option in front of you. Say, you have money and you got to put your money either A or B. You have to put your money, or you are going to put your money, come what may. No doubt about it. So my question to you is, please everyone participate in the poll. Where would you like to invest? Option A, where there is a guaranteed gain of 10%. Option B, where there is a 50% chance of zero gain and a 50% chance of 22% gain. Half the time you would lose, half the time you will not earn anything, half the time you will earn 22%. Option A is a guaranteed 10%, come what may. Every time you invest, you're going to get 10%. Every time you invest, you're going to get 10%. Thank you, everyone. We have great participation. Fantastic. So I think we can run this simulation much faster than what we thought, Prasad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is fantastic.
I request everyone, please do give your answers. You have to invest. That is there is no option. If you have to invest, where will you invest? The next question is going to be different. Again, there's no option of not investing. You again will have to invest. So I'll wait for maybe another 15 seconds. Almost 2/3 of the audiences have participated. If other 2/3 also 1/3 can participate. Believe me, it will be a great takeaway for all of you from this presentation. Another 15 seconds and I will close the poll. Those who have not given the answer, please give your answers. I will share the answers once I stop the poll. I will stop the poll now. And here are the answers. Just keep the answers in mind. It's almost midway, 50-50. 45 are saying A, guaranteed profit, and 55 are saying today we are in a very good market. Maybe that's why 55 are saying, okay, fine. Half the time no money, half the time 22%. Fair. So just keep this in mind. It's almost 50-50. Great. Thank you so much. Next simulation we will see, or next question we'll see. The same question I'll ask. So most people selected A, and that is what always we have seen. Most of the times it happens that way. Now is your next question. Where will you invest now? Where will you invest now? I will again launch the poll. Just give me 1 minute. I've launched the poll. Now, where will you like to invest? The option A has a guaranteed loss. You put in money, you're going to lose 10%. Option B, you put in your money, half the time you'll not lose anything, half the time you lose 20%. Half the time you will not lose money, half the time you will lose money. All those who participated, fantastic audience. Please, I request everyone, do participate again. Oh, almost everyone has already answered. Those who answered last time. This went really quick. And it is, I mean, I can see the live poll, it is going as per my expectations. So yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Cafe Mutual. We have a really very good crowd today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, great. I'll stop the poll and I will share the results. And here are the results. Ta-da! 80-20, 80 are saying they will go for B, 50% chance of loss, 50% no loss. I mean, 50%, 20%, 50% of the time no loss. And A is a guaranteed loss of 10% anytime you invest. Fantastic. Just keep the numbers in mind. I will stop the poll. And that is what is typically seen. Now let us see. If you actually looked at option 1, where most people said, going with A was great. I would prefer a guaranteed 10% gain sort of a thing. So here, most people said go for B. No one said, very few people said A. So just keep that in mind and go ahead. If you actually look at it, now look at it numerologically, I request everyone just look at it carefully. Most of you said A. If you put in 500 rupees, you get 550. Here you put 500, you get nothing, only 500. You have put that money again. How much will you get? Again 10%, 605, 55%. You put in 500, you get 22%. That is 610. So you have made 5 rupees. So the by of law probability, the more you practice B, you will earn more in B. And the very reverse is true for the other one. You put in money, you lose. 500 becomes 450, 500, no loss. 500 stays 500. You put in your money again, 450 becomes 405. A 20% loss now because 50% chance. The next 50% chance, you will lose money. You want to get 400. You want to lose more money in option B, not in option A. The more you invest, the more you invest. It's not that you put in your money and forget. So option A is typically better. I'll just stop sharing this. Prasad is an expert in this. Prasad, would you like to amplify what happened right now?
No, yeah. Thank you, Shailendra. This is a fascinating, exercise, and time and time again, you will see that people have very similar responses. So this is the crux of what in behavioral finance is called prospect theory. So very simply put, if we are faced with losses and gains of the same amount, right? The losses will hurt us more than the gains for the same amount, at least like 2 to 3 times more. So if I have an option to gain 10 rupees versus if I'm faced with a loss of 10 rupees, the loss of 10 rupees will hurt me a lot more than the gain of 10 rupees. So what I do is to prevent losing the 10 rupees, I end up taking more risk. Okay. Whereas when I'm faced with the gain, I don't want to take any risk because I want the gain. I want to make my money. I want to get that money, right? So interestingly, there are, in markets, right? When and this is again goes back to why people don't sell their stocks. Now let's assume you have 2 stocks, right? That you bought at exactly 100 rupees each, for example. One went to 120, the other went to 80. Now you want to sell something to make some money. 9 out of 10 people will sell the 120 rupees stock because it has made them the money, right? This is called the disposition effect, where you sell the winners and you want to keep the losers because you don't want to you want to hit at least 100 at least, the point at which you invested, because you don't like to take a loss. And because you don't want to take a loss, you end up taking more risk of staying with that stock. Probably there is a very strong reason why it went from 100 to 80. Probably it will go to 60, probably it'll go to 50. Similarly, the one that you sold at 120 could have gone to 130, 140, 150. A smarter thing would have been to sell that stock at 80, or at least analyze it carefully. And if you feel that you should sell it, you sell it. Take that money, put it into the winning stock, and hopefully the winning will continue, because there is I'm not talking about momentum, but I'm talking about solid fundamentals. So the point is, whenever we get faced with losses, we end up taking more risk. This happens not just in financial markets, in life itself. any decision in your life, if you just think back about it, right, you would have taken more risk when you are faced with a loss. When you're at, when there's something at risk, when there is a sure shot gain, you want to go for it. And there's multiple aspects around this, but this is the crux of what is happening. Shailendra, do you want to do you agree, disagree?
You also see the word play. What we did in the slide, the word play was guaranteed 10% and guaranteed 10% loss. Guaranteed profit, guaranteed loss. The moment there is a guaranteed profit, people would run for that. Forget the fundamentals. And if there's a guaranteed, I won't say guaranteed loss, but loss looks certain. People will shun it. So the percentage loss and percentage gain was same, 10-10 both sides. But a 10% loss, the mental impact is extremely high. To meet a guy who says, I put in $100, I made 120, think, okay, and FD gives me 5, I got 15% more. The same guy who puts in 100, he loses 5%. He try whole day. He lost 5%. He would have made 5% in FD if he put money there. He's lost 10% and stuff like that. So the emotional reaction to a loss, the loss, mentally we are averse to loss. And that's what Prasad said, we end up taking more and more risk.
And this actually, brings up another very interesting point, Shailendra, Nishant, and that is, there is a concept called myopic loss aversion. So what it actually means is people end up spending too much of time focusing on single trades, instead of taking a portfolio view of things. So for example, let's assume I'm a stock market investor or I'm a mutual fund investor. And let's assume that I've invested in 10 mutual funds or 20 different stocks or whatever, right? But what I will then do is I will be looking at what is happening for each fund or each stock. Anything, one that's not doing well, I focus on it. I'm focused on that particular loss. And then I start to think, what do I do? Do I get out of it? Do I do something else? Do I, whatever, think through it? But what you're missing here is, instead of focusing on that loss individually, you should see how that plays around with the overall portfolio. An overall portfolio has to be diversified. And the very fact of diversification is, if some part of the portfolio is doing well, some other part will not be doing well, which is why you want diversification. Because if everything is doing well, that's a concentrated portfolio taking one single bet. And so instead of focusing on losses individually, whether it's a stock or a fund or whatever, you have to always step back and look at the overall portfolio. Probably you had some small sector stocks, probably you had some large sector stocks or funds. And if one was doing well, if one is not doing well, that's okay. As long as the fundamentals are still there, because investing is a long-term game. And that is something that people forget in the day-to-day, issues of life, right? And Nishant, you were asking this question, why do people make behavioral mistakes, right? The funny part is, we have so much of information around us today that we are constantly, in a sea of information. And because of this constant sea of information, like Shailendra was saying, we are almost provoked to take an action. And so you want to, like every 10 minutes you're watching the market, it's going up, going down. There are pundits, who are talking about this is going to do well, that is going. It's too much of confusion out there. Right. The best thing actually to do is come up with a nice, simple portfolio strategy, stick to it, and do nothing outside investing regularly. That's, I think, the best advice. But that would mean that you not do anything, right? Which is extremely tough, because all of a sudden stock markets, mutual fund markets, whatever, it's a thrill-seeking game in a sense, right? I mean, you go to a weekend party and say, hey, I made 40% in this particular stock last week, or I invested 10,000 and I made 20,000. That's interesting. If I go to a party and I say, what, I invest X rupees every month for the last 7 years. I don't look at the markets. I don't do anything. I just sit tight. It's not an interesting conversation. Yes. So those things also come into play.
Right. Absolutely, Prashant. So my next question is about number crunching and mathematical calculation. As Shailendra has rightly pointed out, that people make simple calculation. The word guarantee has a lot of role to play, right? So in most personal finance decisions, number crunching and mathematical calculations override emotions. But why that is so, Prasad, according to you?
See, first of all, I would actually say that this is actually another concept here, and that is called confirmation bias, right? So actually what ends up happening, just think about this for yourself, or the audience can think about their own experience. 9 out of 10 times, we have already made a decision in our mind. Whether that is to buy something or sell something, we have already made the decision. We just don't know it. And now we look for information that confirms with our initial hypothesis. For example, because of my colleagues or my family or my news, whatever, I've decided that the next 1 year is going to be great for the Indian markets, even though it's very high. I've already made the decision, and almost like I want that to happen. Now, when I do my number crunching, when I do all my analysis, it's amazing. My brain will selectively pick up only stuff that matches with what I've already made, what I've already decided. Okay. Even for example, in office, right, in group meetings and stuff like that. Let's assume 5-6 people are meeting in an office in a group for any decision. And let's assume most probably, the boss or somebody higher up in the hierarchy says, you know what, I think we should make this particular decision, but I want to discuss this. You've already said that you want to make this decision. Now, everybody else will not find it the right thing to oppose, especially somebody slightly more senior. So you will get only token opposition. That's exactly what our brain is doing to ourselves too. We have already decided. It says, fine, this guy has already made the decision. Let's provide supporting evidence, rather than. So all this number crunching, all this data analysis, and this is not just, lay investors, Nishant. It's even, the biggest problem is actually with the experts. Financial analysts themselves have this issue. In fact, there have been studies where I don't know about India, but in developed markets, if you do the exact opposite of what the analysts tell you, you actually end up making more money than following their advice over a period of time. Because everybody makes this mistake, and it's called the illusion of expertise, the illusion of control. Yeah. So I think the most important thing is to understand this. Forget all these names and terminology that I'm throwing, right? That's not important. The important thing is just to understand basic concepts. And then if you just follow those basic concepts, slow down your decision-making processes a little bit, I think that by itself will lead to making good investment decisions.
So Prasad, what are the most common money mistakes that smart people make or do?
See, I would say that the biggest mistake, right? The biggest mistake, and this really goes back to how our mind operates. We extrapolate what is happening today to the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years without your own knowing. I'll give you a simple example. Let's assume that you meet a 35-year-old professional, right? Who's in, for example, working in IT, making a solid pay, having a really good career and stuff like that. Now, this person is going to think that that's how his life is going to be for the next 20 years. This guy or girl, right? 9 out of 10 times. They will think that everything is going to be fine. This is going to be my growth. This is going to be my salary. This is how my life is going to be. So this is all going to be great. If you go and ask this person, hey, have you thought about insurance? Whether that's life insurance or disability insurance. Forget this COVID situation just before that. 9 out of 10 times, they're not even thinking of those things. Wow, insurance for what? Why? I mean, I'm young, everything is good, my health is fine, there's no issues, right? Same thing with retirement planning. If you go and ask the person, have you thought about your retirement and do you have retirement planning in place? They'll say no, because they're expecting this current thing to continue for the next 15, 20 years, okay? It's very difficult for the mind to accept that things could change tomorrow, next week. And so that's the first biggest mistake, where you assume that things will continue in the future, right? To take care of that, the most important thing is to have a slightly negative approach to life, just to make sure that you're okay. So for example, what I would urge everybody to do is just ask yourself, worst case situation, what could happen? You lose your job, you have some disability that happens, so you can't earn what you're earning anymore. In that situation, are you going to be okay at least for the next 1 to 2 years minimum? Because we don't know about the future, right? If not, then you can take certain actions to take care of it today. You can think of health insurance, you can think of life insurance, you can think of the right type of retirement planning in place. So or at least like savings for at least like 5 to 6 months of your expenses. So, prepare, I mean, obviously, prepare, plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's what they say, right? So that's the first mistake. The second mistake, Shailendra, please jump in anytime you want. Happy to like have you. Yeah. The second mistake is we care about, like they say, we care about the pennies and forget the pound, right? So simple thing, right? Let's assume somebody is like looking at online shopping. You want to buy this one, electronic item or this dress for like some 200 rupees off, 500 rupees off. We pay so much attention to it. And then you will see that there's some like 10 lakhs sitting in some, fixed deposit that's earning like 3.5%, after tax or whatever, right? 3.5%. That could have been invested more smartly. Okay. Or the flip side is you're chasing hot stocks, 5 stocks, 10 stocks, concentrated portfolio, market timing, you want to get in, get out, get in, get out. I ask people, can you name, the top 10 music directors of all time? You probably can. Can you name the top 5 cricketers of all time? You probably can. Can you name the top 5 investors of all time? You can. But can you name the top 5 market timers of all time? No, you can't. Because market timing as a strategy never works on a long-term basis. You're probably lucky for 6 months, for 3 years, for 5 years. But for 15, 20 years, no. It will wipe you out, right? So running after pennies and forgetting the pounds, that's a second big mistake, which can take various forms, like, paying the minimum for your credit card debt, or paying a huge EMI, where you're paying like a 10, 12% interest rate, but you're saving only at a 5% interest rate. You'd rather take this and pay off your loan and reduce it rather than keep, saving this, of course, outside your emergency savings. So these are like really, I think, big issues that people can make, and it's very simple to rectify it. Shailendra, do you have any thoughts on that? Does it make sense?
No, it's all the points that you said are very valid. On the behavioral side, as I said, one is people look at returns a lot, but the risk which is actually under their feet is what people miss most of the times. So I think maybe that is what next we can discuss. Chasing of returns, as Prasad said, but with every return or every asset that you're investing, first the risk has to be taken and then the returns follow. Taking of risk does not guarantee returns. That is the big problem.
Right.
So when you are actually chasing any investment, any asset class, the first step is you step on the risk. Second is, maybe then you will get the returns. But when you are putting your feet on that brake or on that step, how sturdy is it? Is it going to take you down with itself? You really don't know. So I think that is also very common with investors. That happens with every asset class, that people chase returns, but without understanding the risk.
Right, absolutely. So, Shailendra, you have been in the industry, in investor education and distribution development for the 15 years or so. So what are your key learnings over the years, and which are related, key learnings which are related to behavior and money?
Thanks. See, the thing is that when we look at investment, what is the primary focus is what we always question. The first thing to do or to realize is when you're putting money anywhere from where you're putting right now. Typically, say, any traditional instrument you're putting, the primary goal is to beat inflation. That is the first thing to keep in mind.
Right.
Second is, when you're shifting from a safer asset, the risk increases. Surely, with every asset, there is a different risk, and the risk changes, and it will go up or down based on the asset which you invest in. Third step is you have to take the risk first, and only then the returns follow. Wherever there is risk, the fourth part is there will be volatility.
Right.
So now, when you are looking at investing, your primary purpose is you want to beat inflation. But when you are getting into that, what you are faced with is volatility. One thing to always remember is, say you are looking at an elephant. So you can't pull an elephant by its trunk. So that is like, you trying to beat inflation. It is just not possible. You cannot control inflation. So you say, inflation is very high. I will ride a bicycle. I will not use a car. You not using a car does not bring down the fuel prices. Right. You had zero impact on inflation, which is a global phenomenon. So there is nothing you can do to bring down inflation. There's nothing you can do. You have to live with it. So it's like pulling an elephant by the trunk. But can you control the elephant? Of course you can. We have a Mahout for that. He does control the elephant. So similarly, now the second issue in front of you is volatility. Can you manage volatility? Of course you can. So there is no point in pondering over, what do I do about this inflation? You have to live with it. Thing is, you have to beat inflation by investing somewhere, and then you are faced with volatility in that particular asset class. Then you tend to go away from it. As we saw the risk aversion, I don't want volatility. I don't want loss. I go to a profitable, a guaranteed return product, which might not beat inflation. That's what happens. You get scared of the inflation, you go back to the original asset. Don't be scared of, you get scared of volatility, you go back to the original asset. Don't be scared of volatility. Volatility can be managed. Just like the Mahout manages the elephant. How can you manage? The most common way or most popular way is asset allocation. So when you are doing asset allocation, and Prasad briefly mentioned that, asset allocation is where you actually invest in inversely correlated asset classes. So when one thing does well, the other thing might not do so well. But when that thing which is doing well for some reason collapses or crashes, the other thing automatically does well. So the overall volatility of your portfolio comes down. Surely the standalone returns of the best performing asset class would be always higher than an asset allocation as a portfolio. Fair enough, but your purpose is to beat inflation. That is taken care of by and large. Not a guarantee, or again, by and large, it should be taken care of. So you'll be able to manage this elephant or control this elephant like a Mahout by doing asset allocation. So I think that is what, if that approach investor keeps, first purpose, beating inflation. Second, don't be scared of volatility. Third, you can manage, you can't eliminate. There's no way to eliminate volatility. You can manage volatility. How? Asset allocation. Even if that is not possible, the simplest thing is do a SIP. Because your volatility, which is totally against you for a lump sum investment, becomes your best friend in a SIP. When the markets fall, you get more units, but your average price also comes down exponentially. And as it turns around, whenever it turns around, you create good wealth. So look at volatility as a challenge, or look at that as the area, like Prasad said, the area of focus should be volatility and how do I manage it, or how do I benefit from it. The inflation part will be taken care of automatically.
Great. So Shailen, since you represent MF industry, so what are the things that MF industry should do to ensure that Indians make smart money choices?
Invest in mutual funds. Yeah. Sorry. As I said, when we look at making a smart choice, what is smart in itself? As I said, when I say smart, and as Prasad said, the definition of smart is changing regularly. What was smart earlier would not be smarter anymore. The definition of smart today would be way different from, say, what it was 25 years back. 25 years back, a smart career choice would have been, to become maybe, I don't know, mechanical engineer or something. And today, 10 years, 20 years down the line, maybe the best choice is, to get into creative work, art or something. 15 years back, maybe we're into IT or something. I don't know. Keeps on changing. So the smart part keeps on changing. But this journey, which I said, look at inflation, try to beat it, look at volatility, try to manage it, and try to beat inflation by asset allocation, and then overcome it, is a common way for any investor. What mutual funds can do over here is, try to educate the investor more and more on these things. The primary aim of investment first is beat inflation, then you think of it. People are directly looking at returns, which is the end game. There are 5 steps to be taken in between before reaching over there. Like in Wimbledon, there are 8 matches that you have to win, then you reach the final and then you win the trophy. So there are 8 steps to be taken in between before you get the returns.
Right.
So if those 8 steps are taken, or if you are aware of that, you have educated yourself, or you have a good advisor, whichever way you look at it. Getting a great advisor is the easiest way to look at it. So if those 7, 8 things are taken care of, and if as mutual fund as an industry, if we can engage more and more on investors on, one is understanding the importance of beating inflation. How inflation eats into your returns if you don't take care of it. Like Prasad said, you put money in a safe deposit, and you are losing money actually on that 3% every year. So I don't know if you lose money in equity in 3 years, but the value of your money will reduce for sure if you put money over there for 3 years by 10%. So educating on the impact of inflation is the first thing. Second thing is educating on the risk which is associated with every asset class. On mutual fund, we have everything available. We have commodity, gold, we have debt, and we have equity, and various products from that. So understanding the risk in debt, understanding the risk in gold, understanding the risk in equity. Third is, because of risk, as I said, it's volatility is the immediate effect of risk. When you look at volatility, how can you manage? As I said, asset allocation, but that is not the only way. There are, again, various paths on that also, options available on that also. So which are the options which are there with you when you are looking at managing this volatility and meeting inflation? Also, one more feature I find very important is, a lot of things come from the West, because this concept of financial planning is quite Western still to India. Mutual fund as a product, though, has been around for a long time, but it is still a newer product for our investors. We might tend to do the mistake of replicating what has worked in the West or developed countries exactly in domestic market, which might not be the best idea. We have seen best of companies which came from abroad and worked in India, or a concept like, say, democracy, which has come from abroad and worked in India, worked by amalgamating into our culture. Companies which have come to India and worked very well, they amalgamated into our culture and brought in their best practices. Companies which came and thrust their best practices or their views, they have had to leave in a matter of a decade or two. So that also is very important, that whenever we are taking something from the developed countries or something from them, because they have already developed this product, and how do you adapt it to the Indian ecosystem is very important. Financial planning or retirement planning or anything that we do, if we just take the model, plug and play is not something that will work. We need to localize theories and concepts, and I'm sure it will help the investor.
Can I just jump in and then give my 2 cents to the question that Nishant asked about what the mutual fund industry can do better in India, right? Because I kind of come from a slightly external context of having spent more than 20 years outside India and then being part of India, obviously, and then coming and going, right? I think the biggest thing that we have to remember is there are 2 things. One is what we communicate. That's exactly all the stuff that Shailendra just said. No doubts about that. But the second most crucial thing is, how do you communicate that? Because I'll give you a very simple example. There is something called regulatory focus in behavioral finance, which basically means that some people are promotion focused and some people are prevention focused. Very simply put, what it means is some people are looking at what they can gain out of something, and some people are looking at how not to lose something. Okay, so if I were to understand, for example, if Nishant, I know that you're promotion focused, and if Shailendra is prevention focused, then I can come and tell Nishant, if you want to make solid returns in the next 15-20 years, you should invest in SIPs, in mutual funds in a very disciplined manner, because you're looking at promotion, the pleasure, this one. If Shailendra is prevention focused and is worried, then I can tell him, Shailendra, if you don't do this, there's a good chance that in 20 years, the money that you have saved will be worthless because of inflation. You will not be able to meet your daily expenses. You will probably end up having to go to your relatives to take some money. We don't know what your situation will be. So you have to think through that carefully and make sure that you're doing the right thing today. You see, I'm saying the same thing, but because I know your psychology and I know Shailendra's psychology, I can tailor that message accordingly.
Right.
Okay. So similarly, there are several other factors, okay, that we have identified in our research, which is where we come up with personas. And so basically personalities. So we have, for example, 8 different personalities, and I'm just sharing this because if people want to like take it, they can. So this is a simple, personality based assessment. It's called ipp.syntonic.com. If you go there, you can take it. We have done this for one of our, clients in India. So the idea is that once you understand somebody's psychological makeup, then you can communicate all the great things that Shailendra said in a very personalized manner. And that is something that not just India, every single country is now waking up to. We have so many clients in the US, in Canada, where if I understand your behavioral traits and your psychological makeup, I can convey the exact same information in different ways that can enable you to understand. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with people. People fundamentally are really smart people, right? But what's happening is because the information is not given to them in the format they can consume, it becomes difficult for to just dumb it down, right? The same potato can be given in different formats. Some people like it as a masala dosa, some people might like it as a samosa, some people might like it as, aloo bonda or vada pav, right? If you know what somebody likes and you basically give that samosa in that format, they're going to consume it. So information is not the problem. Everybody knows what the right thing to do is. Everybody knows that the right thing to do is to stay more healthy, to eat more healthy, to exercise more, to invest better, to save more, to do the right. Everybody knows that. But why is it people are not doing that? Because it's not been conveyed in the format that they can take it. And which is why psychology is extremely, extremely important, because by understanding the psychological factors that impact people, you can convey information to them in the way that they can understand, assimilate, and act upon. That is what is missing, according to me.
So Prasad, so we have seen in most cases, people do not understand that they are making mistake due to their own biases. So in such a scenario, how can they understand about their own biases?
See, now, unfortunately, what you're saying is very, very correct. There are only 2 ways that they can understand their own biases, right? A, they have to be like, obviously, a little bit more engaged. They should kind of like, spend some time educating themselves, reading up stuff, just to make sure that they understand these things, and because information is available. But the second thing is, it now then becomes the responsibility of people like Shailendra, for the financial advisory community to start, broadcasting this message. And biases actually has a very negative connotation. That's not necessarily true, because overconfidence has actually a positive effect also. It's only because of overconfidence that you actually will go up, get out of your chair and start doing something. If everybody was like just the right amount of confidence, there probably wouldn't have been an Ambani, there wouldn't have been a Tata, there wouldn't have been, like a Infosys. They all took risks because they were overconfident at some point, which is very, very important. So every bias has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. Okay. So I'm not saying that biases are all wrong. And biases are part of our DNA. It is going to be with you. But you have to understand how to tame it, like this whole elephant story, that anecdote that Shailendra gave. And so it's important for the mutual fund industry, for the regulator, to talk about these things. And actually, I can't say it out now, but we are actually working with some top regulators to see how we can help disseminate this information to the public, by either, use the right type of behavioral risk assessments, or the right type of like behavioral personality assessments, that kind of like enables people to understand, who am I? Why do I act the way that I act? What drives my behavior? If I start understanding that, then I can start making better decisions. But that's not going to happen overnight. It's kind of a learning curve, right? I mean, like Shailendra said, the financial markets in the West have been around for so many years. But even they have just literally started to wake up to the fact of behaviors and psychology in investing, just literally in the last like 3-4 years, I would say. I mean, before that, everything was very theoretical in nature. Now things are getting to a more practical nature, where people like us are starting to develop tools and stuff like that. So I actually think that India is way ahead, really way ahead in this game. Because, for example, in India, right, we directly went from like at 5-10% landline penetration to 100% mobile penetration in a matter of 3, 4, 5 years. So we have the advantage of leapfrogging, ahead, which is why I think India is a great place, much better place than Western markets, because mutual fund penetration is extremely low. Yeah. So by talking about mutual funds and by talking about psychology, by talking about behavior, you can actually come up with an entire new class of amazing, really thinking through type investors, which will be really good for the market as a whole.
So, Shailendra, my next question is for you. So, a few investors follow their instinct while taking financial decisions. So, what is your advice to them?
Yeah, interesting. See, when I say instinct, if that instinct is backed with experience and knowledge, there is some method to it. There are so many players in their respective fields. Say a cricketer, when he's watching a match, he can tell now what will be the next delivery or when someone will get out. Because he just tuned his mind into the game so much. And someone can say, like Prasad can say, it is pattern analysis. Someone else would say, he just has a good IQ. So tough to exactly say what is gut feeling, but various ways to look at it. But in case your gut feel has that experience with you, or it comes out of the experience of being in that particular field, working in that particular field, and that comes with experience. There's a very good shlok in Bhagavad Gita. It says, Bahunemi Vyatitani Janmani Tavachal. What it means is that Krishna is telling to Arjun, you and me have been doing this discussion Janam after Janam. You don't remember it, but I remember it. You're Arjun, but I remember. So same applies. So if you have seen many cycles, if you have experience, knowledge, fundamental analysis, technical analysis, liquidity, 10 factors you are studying day in, day out, then believe me, instinctively you are better placed. But if you are just, by, very limited media inputs, if you're going to say instinctively, then basically I would say it is inertia. And what is doing well will keep on doing well, and you make a mistake. Or, like Prasad also said, people keep on believing the confirmation bias that they have. So instinct typically would be a confirmation bias, or it would be inertia, nothing more than that. But if you have seen cycles, you have very good knowledge of that particular industry, then instinct has a decent weightage. But otherwise, I would caution people.
So, Shailendra, in the current market rally, so what behavioral biases should investors be wary of, and how can they tackle these?
That's interesting, the sort of behavioral biases people have. But the most common behavioral bias which people keep on saying, and again I said, Bahunemi Vyatitani. I've seen it, we have seen it so many times, is the toggling between greed and fear. Now, I need not amplify to all of you in which stage we are right now. I think we all know between this toggling of greed and fear where exactly we stand right now. So, because you said about current times, the tendency would be to go away from the discipline of asset allocation. People start with asset allocation, but they may or may not continue. And these times are where people might tend to discontinue with the discipline of asset allocation and go ahead with the inertia of the market. And my simple input or response to that is, every vehicle has every car has a seat belt, and we all put our seat belts. But you need to reflect, when is the seat belt more effective, at the speed of 20 or at the speed of 150? You yourself realize at what speed you are driving right now on the investment lane. Why is the seat belt necessary? One accident, you're gone. So asset allocation is that seat belt which will take care of at 20 and 150 also. But at 20, the seat belt will just help you from a scratch. At 150, it stops you from death. So at these whatever situations that we are in, asset allocation is very important. People should stick to that. People are deviating from that, moving from the profile, as Prasad said, whatever profile they would have, they are shifting from the profile, going far ahead of their profile. So that is a mistake they are doing, and historically it has not had great results, so they should avoid it.
Great. So Prasad, my next question is for you. So for the viewers watching this and realizing their behavioral biases after watching this show, so what corrective measures they should take?
I think the most important thing that they can do is to focus on the process. They should think about what investing means to them. What is the process that they follow? Is the process just randomly investing in mutual funds or stocks based on TV news every now and then? Or is it process to invest every month or once a quarter? Or if a particular asset allocation has gone beyond 30-40% because the markets have rallied. So they have to focus on a process, right? That would be essential. Number two is you have to also probably have an external advisor. Either it could be a human financial advisor or it could be a digital advisor, whatever, right? Because you need some push from something or somebody to kind of like keep you in the right lane. Yeah. Because when we are just doing it by ourselves, when there is no process, life takes over. And I will say, this month I've been busy. I can't watch news. I can't do this. I'll do it next month. Then. That's a problem. So having a process in place, if you don't have a strong process, at least having a person, digital or or human or hybrid could be very, very important. And more importantly, the third thing is just to think about what risk means, because a lot of people equate risk to volatility. Risk is actually not volatility. The real risk is in 20 years, you're not in a good position. Or in the next 10 years, you're not in a good position. You do something stupid and it hits you. That could be, somebody could be ultra conservative and inflation could wipe out their savings. Somebody is ultra aggressive and putting everything in their own company stock and it's a Satyam or some kind of a scam, and then it just completely goes to zero, after like 6 months or something. So the risk is not volatility, but the risk is actually making the wrong choices today. That is the biggest risk. So if people stop thinking of mutual funds as, risk stock, no, that's not risk. Risk is what you're not doing today, what you should be doing, but what you're not doing. Okay. So I think these are fundamental things that people should think through.
Great. So since we are running out of time, I'll ask a final question to both of you, and I'll request all the audience to post their questions in Q&A. So I'll take a couple of questions from audience as well. Ending remark for both of you, 3 pieces of advice you would give to people for them to lead more financially secure life. So Shailendra, you can add something. Start.
Sure, thanks. First of all, thanks to Cafe Mutual. Very good event, and thanks for the audience for being so participative. So before concluding, I thought, because in the poll they really participated so well, and so it turned out to be so nicely. Thanks, Cafe Mutual. Thanks to all the audience for being so kind and participating. See, when it comes to investment, I always remember the movie Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was not the smartest person, but he was not a smart, but he achieved a lot of things by just sticking to the basics. His teacher tells him, follow the ball, hit the ball, he becomes a ping pong champ. He goes to China. When it comes to running, becomes a baseball champ or something by just following the basics which were told to him without thinking much about it. Forrest Gump, yeah. Forrest Gump was that movie. So I think when I look at investments also, great, we can give you all the dope in the world, but if you stick to the basics, follow the basics, like for your personal health also, you eat in time, eat in moderation, have a good sleep, eat good amount of water, sleep well, and surround yourself with good people, you are going to be perfectly fine. That's it. Don't do anything more than that, and you will be perfectly fine. The rest of the things are okay. So the unexpected events, then a specialist is required for that. That's a different case. But this is in your hand. It's in your hand to eat in time and sleep in time and stuff like that. So as an investor, what is in your hand is what I always look at when it comes to investment. One is start early and stay invested for a long time. So the earlier you start, the better it is when it comes to any investment, mutual fund, real estate, whatever it is. Any investment that you look at, asset allocation that you look at, start early and stay invested for a longer time. The more cycles you see, the better off you come. The better you come off, in terms of the returns. You become a much mature investor also. Start early, stay invested for a long time. First thing. Second, be adequately insured. That's very important because you're going to jump into that well, you got to have that rope tied to you. Without that, you're going to jump, you're going to die. So it's very important that you be adequately insured. And I think that is a lesson we learned the hard way in the second wave. So it's very, very important to be adequately insured, health, life. And the simple thing of having, as Prasad always says, something goes wrong, what do I do? Have that emergency fund with you. Whatever your 6 months salary, 10 months salary, very important. So be adequately insured. Maintain that liquidity of 6 to 10 months of your income. If something really goes bad, at least that high impact of the initial time can be taken care of. You're mentally in a frame to tackle it. If you don't have money, believe me, the problem escalates 100 times. So at least that part is taken. Do maintain liquidity of 6 to 12 months of your salary. That is the second hygiene to be maintained. And third is not a very popular one, but it's my personal view. Avoid too much debt or liabilities. People it goes against what I said, start early. So people say, let me start early and buy a big home loan in the early part of my life. What's wrong? But not applicable for liabilities. Try to keep your debt on liability as less as possible. Here also, I remember Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, there is a phase, there's a part of Mahabharata where 100 questions are asked to Yudhishthira. And one of the questions asked to him, who is the most worried person in this world? And the answer he gives him, who has debt on his head. So you will be the most worried person if you have debt on your head. People say, no, you can take money and run away. Believe me, even then you're worried only. So just remember Yudhishthira and try to keep your debt as less as possible. So start early, stay invested, basic hygiene of insurance and maintaining 6 to 12 months of liquidity, or that much of your income, and keeping your debt moderate or less or zero as possible. So these three things if you do, I think you're home.
Great advice, Helen. Prasad, would you like to add?
No, I think this is fantastic. Exactly. So stay humble. Stay, especially in bull rallies, stay humble. Think about what could go wrong, and see if you're adequately covered. Look at your process, and then that's it. That will probably take care of a lot of things.
Okay. So Prasad, there's one question from audience for you. So 8 persona that you mentioned, can you please explain to?
Yeah, I will. What I will do is I will do a very quick share here. So these are the kind of 8 different personas that we have come through our research. Okay. Each persona has a different way of looking at investments, a different risk profile, a different way of reacting to market events and stuff like that. And but obviously to explain that will take a little bit of time, which is why I suggested that people can actually go here and take this. It will then tell them what their persona is. It will redirect automatically to a partner's site, which is fine, but you can actually take it, it's free. And then that will tell you what your persona is and what your risk profile is, because risk profile changes. And that's what we kind of we have to be careful about. And so what drives our risk? So we have risk models where, for example, if you look at most risk tools out there that tell you you're aggressive, you're conservative, you're balanced, we actually go 2 levels below. Why are you aggressive? Why are you conservative? Why are you balanced? Can you change tomorrow? If you change tomorrow, what could you become? So we actually do all those things as well. And it is important for us to not really know where we are today, but where we could go down the line. But explaining those personas will take a bit of time. So which is why I kind of asked users to to take a look at this.
Okay. So Shailendra, another question has come. So I guess you may be the right person to answer. For a retirement fund, now should I invest lump sum amount horizon for where to invest for 5-10 year horizon for retirement purpose?
This is a very broad question, very tough to just answer it. But yeah, we will not let our audience go without at least some sort of answer. 5 to 10 years is not too long, too short a time. And investment to lump sum or SIP really would depend on the end goal. If today he has 1 CR and for retirement he requires only 1.5 CR, he can do lump sum. It really would matter how much corpus he has and how much corpus he is looking at. So what matters is what sort of corpus he is looking at after 5-10 years, and then how much money he wants to start with. Does he have, that is the first thing to remember. Second is his own risk profile. I can't just randomly tell him to put money into equity when he might be having a home loan which takes 60% of his EMI or 60% of his salary. No point in me telling him to go aggressive or something of that sort, or he has a liability or he has some expenses which are going to come in the future. So his risk profile would matter a lot. Whether he tends to do SIP or lump sum depending on the goal which he has. So a lot of those things have to be taken into consideration. Only then, we can do his retirement planning. Only one thing I can tell him which will help him or something different is look at voluntary PF. That's a very important feature which many people tend to oversee when they're doing their own retirement planning. It's available for free for everyone by the Government of India, and we don't use it. We do our EPF, say 1 lakh, and above that we can put another 1.5 lakhs and get 8.5% without any tax. That will create a good amount of corpus for him over the next 5 to 10 years. So, as I said, I can't answer lump sum or SIP, but as I said, I don't want to let him go without any input from our side. Use your VPF completely, sir. That would help you in the long
run. Okay. So Gopal Sharma wants to understand whether which fund is more suitable for SWP, and should he go for volatility funds? Equity fund for SWP.
Please suggest fund for SWP and volatility good for SWP. Please repeat the Gita Shlok. Gita Shlok I can repeat immediately. The first thing, because someone told it to me. It's Bahunemi Vyatitani Janmani Tavachat. Bahunemi, बहुत बार, Vyatitani बिताया है, Janmani जन्म, अरे और. That's what it means. That is the Shlok of Gita. You can use it for your reference anywhere. Coming to SWP, if your underlying asset or investment in SWP is volatile, it will go against. If the underlying asset is not volatile, it's okay. If you put money into equity today, to say remove 10% in a year, the market collapses 10%. So after 1 year, your total capital which you had will come down to say 78-77%.
Right.
So then you will end up with only 77%. That year you will again withdraw 10%, 10 rupees actually, not 10% from the initial entry. Okay. And if the markets don't recover, you are at 67. Then what do you do? So you will be in a big soup if you invest in an underlying asset which is volatile, and you want regular income from that. SWP is okay. It works better where the underlying asset volatility is less. There will be no asset where there is no volatility. Okay. So then Gopalji can make his choice.
Okay. So one last question, Shailendra, flexi or multi-cap, which is good for investors? Okay. Flexi cap or multi-cap, which one is good for investors?
It is very easy to answer. Extremely easy to answer. You tell me, who's the all-time best player? Tendulkar or Brian Lara? Give me that answer. I will tell that answer.
Okay.
So these are very subjective questions, frankly.
Right.
Like the or multi. It really depends from what lens you are looking at it, from what angle you are looking at it. For a guy who's 85-year-old, both the products are equally bad. Because for him, it's 100% debt, which really matters. So both are equally bad. For a guy who's younger, maybe can't take risk. something which gives him the ability to take more risk is slightly better. So very tough to answer that.
Okay, so one question has come for Prasad. So if okay.
If anybody needs to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me at prasad.ramani@syntonic.com. Not just for business, even if there's anything I can help you with personally, I'd be happy to do that. So please, yes, get in touch with me. Thank you.
So with that, we have come to an end to this interesting session. Thank you so much, Shailendra. Thank you so much, Prasad, for the valuable nuggets and insightful knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you, Nishant, for having me today. Shailendra, you've been such a fabulous, co-host. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Prasad. Great inputs, great learning from you also from this today's session. Thanks, Nishant. A wonderful initiative by Cafe Mutual. And thanks to the audience. Not only were they participating during the presentation, but even after that. Really very interesting, insightful and pointed questions. So great audience we had. It's always good to have an enthusiastic and participating audience. So thanks to them also.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, each one of you, for being such a wonderful audience. Have a lovely weekend ahead.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.